Everything good?
Yep.
All right. Oh, so quiet suddenly. Hello, everybody. How you going? Welcome to melb.net. And I had a clicker. There we go. Does it work? Yay! So just quick acknowledgement of traditional owners. We acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting tonight, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. We acknowledge that the sovereignty has never been succeeded. So, yep, hello, welcome, thanks for joining. Melb.net tonight. As you know, we're all about .NET at our core, no pun intended, but we like to talk anything tech-related, anything that's relevant to a .NET developer. And the main point of these events is to just bring everyone together, meet like-minded people, have some fun, have some pizza. It's always nice to have free stuff, and try and make it exciting. So we follow the .NET Foundation's Code of Conduct. So it's pretty standard. It just means just be nice to everyone, be respectful. So feel free to go and read that. Bit of housekeeping quickly. Bins right there behind you. It seems like everyone's found them. Down that hallway to your left is the bathrooms. And if you hear me screaming, emergency or whatever, don't go that way. Go down that way. And go down the stairs rather than the elevators. So just follow someone that sort of heads that way. What else is there? Tonight, we are testing a live stream straight to YouTube. The camera's over there. So if you don't want to be on YouTube, don't look at the camera. But maybe from next month onwards, if everything goes smoothly, with the help from Bill and Bron, she's at home monitoring the live stream currently, then we'll do a regular live stream from now on. Cool. So if you haven't joined our Discord yet, there should be, hopefully that's still a permanent link, and also it's to a recruitment channel. So if you have any roles available at the company that you're working at, or you're looking for roles, join that chat, because from time to time we might advertise something. And is anyone here who's actually looking for or has open roles they might want to talk about? Randy does. Do you want to come grab the mic in a sec, Randy? All right. So even if you want to keep a little bit on the down low, join that channel. There's some recruiters in there as well. Sometimes it's quite nice to hear that they have actually helped out people in the community and landed some roles for them, so it's quite nice. So, Randy, you've got something to offer?
Yeah, sure. So, I myself is Randy, working for Rinko, which is just sitting behind these walls. We have a number of open roles. We are constantly changing that. It's pretty much evolving. So, but if anyone is looking actively, just feel free to grab me. I'm in the back, or anytime, just say hi. I myself, again, for anyone who's in the industry, I also offer mentorship as well, so feel free to come and jump, and I'm happy to help in any way I can.
Cool, thanks Randy. Yeah, so just to expand on that, I also work at a Rinko, and got a couple other Rinkons here, so we're looking for app developers, infra, data, security. I think literally everything that we have on offer, there's a gap at the moment, so we're very busy. If you're interested, just talk to me, Randy. Ahmad's here somewhere. There he is. Just reach out. And cool. So we also, like I said, we're on YouTube. Past videos will be there. Future videos are also going to go onto YouTube. And you obviously turn up tonight because you found us on Meetup or one of the other social channels. I think we're mainly on LinkedIn these days as well. Twitter's not really much of a thing. If you want to have some fun, you want to join us on stage here at the front, or floor, whatever you want to call it, you can submit a talk, all right? Really encourage first-time speakers to submit. There's a few of us that like to help coach, like Randy mentioned, mentorship and that kind of stuff. Submit, reach out, always happy to help. It really stretches your abilities a little bit to be able to deliver the knowledge that you have gained from working on something really cool to others, give your perspective on things. It is a lot of fun. So then tonight's sponsors, we've got Arinco for all the food and the venue, along with Tankstream Labs. Sorry, I don't have a picture there for them at the moment. Bill from Six Pivot doing all the AV stuff. Makes it look way too easy. Always comes prepared. And then we've got the .NET Foundation that pay for our Meetup page. Surprisingly, it's very expensive. So, yeah. What do we got? So we got upcoming events in Melbourne. So we've got Experts Live on the 30th of July at PwC in Melbourne. So I don't have a compass. I don't know which direction it is. It's across the river, which is maybe not that way. But yeah, it's a great event. There's a good agenda there. Check it out. Am I standing on a cable or something? Standing in front of the speaker, it doesn't help. It's making a weird sound. Yeah, so it's run by the Azure Builders Group in Melbourne. So great bunch of people. It's a great event. So if you want to, I think there's still some spots available. So sign up and check it out. Then we've got 2 talks tonight. So we've got Andrew from Arinco talking about a P1 incident resolution using AI context and data. Quite relevant to what I think we all be doing, supporting something in production. So I'm very keen to see this one. I've only heard snippets of what might be in this talk, so keen to see the rest. And then we've got Bill here, so hopefully everything's super automated and be hands-off, the live stream stuff, so Bill can come and talk to us about logic apps and convince us why it's the best or better choice, I don't know, best? For integration, okay, sure. And then, yeah, so 2 great talks tonight for a lineup, and I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to hand over to Andrew. Welcome.
We'll get them.
All right, you should just need that one. Oh, yeah. Ooh, not working.
What? I turned it off, sorry. That's higher.
Okay, back on.
Well, that should be
So,
working.
do you want questions during the talk or just leave it all till the end?
Probably maybe at the end, if that's cool.
All right, leave it all till the end, no
Might
problem.
make it easier. There we go. Cool. Thanks, William. So yeah, my name's Andrew. I'm an AI consultant engineer at Arinco. And this is relatively I'd say like a non-technical, it's not a code-heavy talk. It's actually, I like the ideas. For me, the ideas are more important sometimes than code details. But overall, about 2 months ago, one of our clients had a big P1 incident. The servers were down. My boss was spent a late night trying to try out some of the issues, and then he roped me in to come in and help them. And what they wanted was some observability, a bit of confidence in what could be done. And so I joined the war room late on a Thursday afternoon. And so before I start, I thought I'd share awesome ideas and thoughts by Birgitte Bockler. She's from ThoughtWorks, and she does a great article, Harness Engineering. And she talks about the idea of feed forward and feedback. And they're the things when we're doing agentic coding, where we can help steer the agent and get responses from the agent. So feed forwarding is instructions in the context doc. So we steer the agent to act in a certain way. And then we have feedback or sensors, is once the agent's executed its work, we can feed it back. So we can use logs and linters and tests and information. And then a sort of a loop construct. What we can do is create this nice feedback loop where we guide the agent, get information, and we steer it back into it. And we're evolving and we're iterating through the actual agentic workflow. So I find this pattern awesome. I forgot to start my stopwatch. And so the incident started a couple of days before. Quick summary, it's a big legacy .NET application, .NET 4, sitting on on-prem servers, IIS. And effectively the website was seizing up, like the P95 response time was like multiple, 325 seconds. And so that was the context I had, but I had probably lesser context in the start, was that I came in from scratch, had no grounding, and I should have said Arinco were like AI first consultancy, but for the first and foremost is AI. In my mind, that's how I'm going to start. That's my starting point. And so I sort of call it 5 days in summary and an empty folder to start, because that's all I had. I didn't have anything. And so on the Thursday night, I join the war room, I get some information, we get some logs information, I make a quick analysis, get some logs, and I make a summary finding. On the Friday, I had better access to their system. I didn't have access to the code base. And then late evening on the Friday, I had access to their code base, and I identified some remediation, some core issues for the application to make an immediate remediation plan, which they executed on the Saturday. The Saturday, they deployed those changes, the thread settled down. The incident was still high, but we'd bought some time. Effectively, the server wasn't crashing anymore. And so we'd bought some time. And what they needed was a remediation plan, but also a data-driven and evidence-based approach to have a remediation plan, but also tie everything back, not just make an ad hoc changes, not make just sort of a piecemeal, but every change that was going to be made, we have evidence-based and factual-based information. So that was the Saturday and the Sunday, and then the Monday was the analysis, remediation plan, and delivered it to the client. So the Thursday for the starting point was building up context. I had no context information on what was occurring. It's a multi-layered API application, multiple mobile apps and web consumers and different channels, but too much information to take in all at once. And so my plan really was, that was from my boss, all the quotes in blue are off from my prompts into the CLI. And that's all the information I had. So I started an Agents MD with that quote. And what I'm doing is I'm building up the instructions. My intent is to build up some layers. And so on that, this is the Thursday evening, I started that Agents MD. I got some the event logs from the on-prem server, IIS logs. And then I got a Claude and Copilot to read the parser to start parsing out those files to get information about what was occurring. I built some HTML dashboards to give some visibility for the client, and then it sort of identified what was occurring was that thread exhaustion. All the threads were coming up in the server, and the actual reached a deadlock point where the server was in effectively like a deadlock state. And so part of that opening slide that I did was the idea of build tools, not prompts. To build everything that we do, rather than make a prompt in, think about building out a particular tool to solve a job, to have a reproducible way of doing a task, and not just have to rewrite the same thing again and again. I might actually sit down. And so these are literally quotes that I put in. Was build me event log parser, put it into a JSON format so I could read it, so I could understand it. And then on the Friday, where I'm doing more coding analysis, based on the previous night, was beginning to have a hypothesis that there was, based on the Claude's information, that there was probably a looping call. And so I made up the blue one in there. Could the server be calling itself? Could it be doing that? And Claude said I was typed in and I already had some context data. And Claude looked through the data and said, it looks like it can. And then my second line is I eventually got access to the code base. And then I said, I didn't even understand the code base, but my question was, can this particular application flow be calling itself? And then going through the code, looking at the IIS logs, going through the event viewer, the answer was yes. And so what that was meaning was the application was coming in, a thread was coming out, but because of there's a blocking thread and the server's under load, that initial thread's blocked and will never be answered, so it comes into a locked. And the old-fashioned CLR in .NET 4 would just spawn another thread, and again and again and again. So doing that within hours, I identified that and other problems. and I made the immediate remediation plan. And I said, we need to do this, let's deploy it. And so that's what they did. On the Saturday morning, they deployed it, and we watched the graph go down. And the P1 incident hadn't been resolved, it hadn't been changed. But what we'd done is bought ourselves some time. We've reduced some pressure. And then this time I hadn't properly understood the code base. All I did was a targeted spiraling through the code base. What we needed to do was really solve the problem. And so I mentioned that the client needed to do an evidence-based approach to solving the problem. And so the Saturday and Sunday is really about, for me, like the story of this, what I want to communicate, was what I needed to build out was a foundation for being able to tie everything what's occurring, and it happened in the previous week, to all of the targeted code changes that needed to be made. So I started with this. I didn't have initially access to the code. And so I just made a folder, agentsmd, and then Claude, I make Claude's just a pointer to agentsmd. And so it's the instruction, it's the system map. And all of these folders are storing the context information, building out the layers. So I've got that there. Is the idea of building out is what I want to do is I want to create a context, be able to stop and start a session, and get back to the exact point where I was. And also run agents in parallel, Codex, Copilot, and Claude, and they're all within the same context. So I'm not sharing Claude session or Copilot session, I'm storing my context, the application context. So these folders that I've got here, it's like GitHub, it's Copilot instructions, it's a pointer to agentsmd. Agentsmd, the core of it, the system map. The pointer to all of the documents, it's got all the tribal knowledge, the conventions, the finding. It's not massive, but it's acting as I call it the system map. The ClaudeMD, a pointer, the data, all my data that I've ingested, IIS logs, and then eventually I imported all into like DuckDB, a relational DB. I've got my findings folder where I do, it's like a sandbox. So I would make a query, do some analysis, get Codex to make a query on IIS, version, blah, blah, blah. And I'd put all raw findings in there. The initial investigation, which I put out on the Friday night, I stored it just so there was context of the understanding. The repo, when I eventually got it, went into this context folder. The reports, all the structured, the communication documents that I provide to the client. So the output of all what I've been doing. The reviews, the tag team, when I'd get Claude or Copilot to review code or make a suggestion or do analysis, I would constantly go, Claude did this, review that, and get Codex to output it. And it's like tag teaming. And it's providing effectively a conversation and the agentic workflow within that, and then the scripts, all the tools that we've written so they can be reusable. And agentsmd knows about these tools, the equivalent of a skill. A Python, an IIS log parser is in this, blah, 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 and it does that. So on the Saturday, what I need to do was build out this layer. So all of the data. I've got IIS logs, event viewer, app insights, and what I did was I pulled it all within to one data layer. And I was running ad hoc, I didn't have proper access to their system. I had access to app insights, but I didn't have right access to Azure. And so I pulled it all in locally, all of this data, to cross-correlate it. And then that's the question I put is, what DB should I do? And I said, DuckDB, because it's easy, or it's a CLI, all agents can call it, and it's simple. And then the other part is I wanted context. I need to start understanding the application. And so what I did was I pulled in a tool that I've developed. It's on GitHub, it's on MIT license. It's the ACF that's effectively, it produces repo documentation. It's grounded in verified steps. But what it does is a multi-session steps with different agents, reviewing the code base, producing documentation, get steps to verify it, grounded in facts, make sure that they're not hallucinated or incorrect, and then rinse and repeat. And that's effectively ACF. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to be able to chat to the code base, but I knew I was about to start getting the agents to work on the code base. And I wanted to make sure that, and I want to trust, that the agents were grounded in facts. The grounded would not just hallucinate, not just one code scan, but a verified code scan where it's not going to hallucinate. And so ACF acts like a system map. It's within the agent's MD. There's like a retrieval discipline. That its job is for the agent when it's say do feature X or whatever. How does this part work? The system map is telling it where to find it. It goes, you want to do auth. It's in this file. More than likely, the method's called XYZ. And the point is to reduce token usage, to make reduce context rot within context window, and make your agentic workflow sessions move much quicker. So sort of quickly in summary, I did that on the Thursday and Friday. And then the Saturday we put out the fire. The graph sort of went down. There were still issues, we're still fixing things. Sunday's building out the platform, and then Monday's the analysis and the handover to the client. What happened within these days was almost 6 million data points, rows of data, 600 a massive monolithic code base. And all of these data points were correlated and put into context and all date correlated and everything interrelated. That's the data and context aspect. The simple sort of investigation was, Thursday, joining the war room, having no context, pulling out IIS logs and making an additional report. And also I quite like I really like, probably as we all do as a consultants or developers, is investigating things. I really like investigating things. I like fixing bugs, it's interesting. But I had to keep an open mind because the application was so monolithic. There's no chance I'm going to be able to solve it all together. What I wanted to do was build up a layer and a grounding and a context, and then take it in a methodical way. So Friday, I had the insight, I got Azure. I identified the deadlock, but also 3 or 4 critical fixes, and we said, let's deploy them straight away. And then Saturday, they deployed it, so pressure's off, but take a bit of a breath and pull in, do the onboard ACF, pull in the data. Sunday, I'm still making fixes, and I'm not writing code for it. I'm making recommendations. I think you should change this line of code or change this block. Here's a snippet, because I didn't have write access to it. And then on Monday, on Sunday night actually, I was confident enough to go in my head, I know the answer. I know what the problem is. And it was there's multiple, it's not just one thing, but I was confident enough on Monday that I could produce the remediation report and I could say conclusively, this is why it's happened, this is on this date, and it tiered away from all there. And then critically what I can do with the code-based understanding, I can correlate every remediation plan, every remediation changed to a data point, an error log, something in the exception flow. And so it was all correlated between issues that had occurred in the previous week. And then that's sort of in the time, I've been saying like a week, I've been saying 5 days. But in elapsed time, it was 24 hours. It was 3 days. Thursday was 3 hours. Friday was, I was on a different engagement, so I'm sort of doing this at the side. Friday was 4 hours. Saturday was 6 hours. Sunday was 6 hours, 7 hours or something. And then the analysis and remediation was done on the Monday. So within all of that, the space of elapsed time, 24 hours, I was able to achieve that. Go from nothing, grounding, an empty folder, to a full understanding on the Sunday night when we were not live streaming, but evaluating. I was able to connect it to all app insights and everything, and the client could ask, what's happening now, why is that occurring? And I could type into the context layer, and then I can say, that's occurring because of this. The thread issue that I identified the other day, that's occurring because this line of code is doing that. And so how that was all possible, why was all that possible? Why could I do all that in 24 hours? Was the context, the starting point, the agent's MD, the system map, starting everything and then correlating and having a structured approach to tying everything together. And so what I could do with the shared context, so Copilot, Codex, and Claude would all, Copilot and Codex all read agents MD. Claude, you have to tell it, hey, read agents MD. You just do a pointer in Claude.md. But that's the context, and I use that, the agents MD, as the metaphor for providing the context. I could shut my computer down, close all the CLIs down, start again, and the context is there again, and it rehydrates it. The data layer, the ingestion pipelines that I helped build out, and then eventually the data layer I could cross-correlate. That was fantastic, amazing, because then I could provide evidence to all of the what's occurring, but also help me understand it. To go, I don't understand all these, these events and why is it doing that, but to be able to make coherent queries over multiple data sources helped me understand it, as well as the agents. The rapid code investigation, as we all know, AI is awesome for spidering through and giving us hallucinations. So not hallucinations, giving us insights, but it also can hallucinate, so it's fallible. But the speed that it can do it is amazing. The reporting aspect, to build out charts and graphs and KL queries, and I would save them. And at real time, the clients would say, what's occurring now? And I could just do quickly a graph or thing and then send it to them in real time. That data reporting aspect was foundational. And then I touched on that, the multi-agent workflows, the ability to cross-work with different agents. To do Copilot's working on this, Codex is doing that, and then for them to tag team off each other. You can do the same thing, you could run 3 Copilot CLIs if you want, but I find it can sort of slow it down. But if you're lucky enough to have different providers, that cross-agentic workflow is extremely useful because they can run on independent tasks, but then also circle back with a shared context document to agree on a particular design or argue about a particular design. What worked, what was the good takeaways were all of these sort of the LLMs and the models are fantastic, but a hypothesis from a loose question. One of the questions that I said is, could the server be calling itself? And that was on the Friday. And then that was foundational. And then we go, oh, well, how do we prove that? And then eventually we got like some PowerShell script to run on the server to pull out DNS information and all that. And then we went, yes, 100% it's true. But the ability for LLMs and models from a small little snippet of information to infer a large amount. But I'd also flagged that hypothesis as well was based on the data that I've been accumulating. So it's collective as well. The similar one, the scale from the single instruction on the Friday when I went, I think it's this, Claude, do a targeted, you've got 600 files to look at. I want you to do an analysis on just thread, things that could be producing a thread, threading issues and performance issues. For a human to do that, or anyone to do that, could take a considerable amount of time, but you'd need domain knowledge. You'd need an understanding of all the inputs, the downstream, the upstream. It's extremely difficult. LLMs and models with their vast sort of grounding in information, they can quickly do that. And I will flag that that was part of it. I did that analysis, but I did get Claude to do it, and I got Codex and Copilot to both review it because I wanted to be certain that its findings were correct, that it wasn't hallucinating a false positive, because I was about to make recommendations, so it needed to be grounded in truth, in fact. The document, as in what I mean document without a write-up phase, is where possible, record everything, store everything. When the prompt comes back, I would say, that's great, save it to an MD. Because I actually think about, I was thinking, in an analogy, it's like Bitcoin mining, is when we're doing we're burning up tokens. It's, in a way, it's like gold. You don't want to throw away the gold, you may as well store it. And so that's what I think about in documentation and context, is not everything, but sometimes things are gold, and if it's gold, store it. And save it for the memory, save it for the context, because you can reuse it. Rather than make the same prompt tomorrow and burn the same amount of tokens, it's wasting money, it's wasting time. The context carrying across over days, shut my computer off, everything gone, start again, bang, it's just there. That's amazing, that's awesome. And then the cross-correlation, that data layer, putting everything in correlated, and once everything was correlated and like even Git history and down to the dates, we could actually pinpoint changes and go, oh, okay, sure, so this happened then, the change when we did this, we can actually see the improvement in App Insights. Everything was correlated. And then what didn't work is, again, it's more like LLMs, I would probably say, is they're fallible. And I'll go back to the first slide that I did, is the tools, the steering and the feedback and feed forward. And the blue ones are my quotes from the Claude session or Copilot session, is sometimes oversimplify things, not understand the context, or be too eager to answer a question. And I would say, no, that's too simple. And then the opposite, don't make it too complicated. You're overcomplicating things, you're overbaking it, you're over-engineering things. And that's part of that. I would think it's, in a way, make a prompt where you steer, or an instruction, where you steer the agent to not overcomplicate things. Or, if they do overcomplicate things, feedback and say, no, that's too complicated. Make a memory, put it in the tribal knowledge into Agents MD. Don't in the context, use this particular pattern. Don't unnecessarily introduce complexity unless it's needed. The complex task drift, you're probably all aware, but that, there's me typing in, what are you doing? Is sometimes I do a long running task and I wouldn't checkpoint it. What I should have done is make a plan, checkpoint tasks, and report back to me when you've done task A, B, and C, and D. Sometimes I would, just in a rush, I'd make a long running task and then it would go off and then I'm just sort of waiting on something and it hasn't returned, it hasn't got a result. And so that's me saying, what are you doing? And then I can see some of its output and then I go stop, because it's just gone down on a different path that was not desired. But I'd also tie that back into that feeding back as well. LLMs, confident, not true, the pattern inference, the convention inference and behavior inference that all models do, they base it on their data. They look at what they've trained on. That EF framework works like this. A particular library works like that. And so it won't look at the code, it won't look at the particular issue, it'll infer it. It'll just infer behavior. And in that case, it's not looking at the code, it's not looking at the context. And so that I would say that's not true. Where is the code for that? Because it's effectively, it's hallucinated it, but it's inferred it from its training. And so in awareness, so if you're aware of that, then it's more you need grounding. It's extremely difficult to avoid that. But what it basically means is always require verification from the model and not just take it in blind faith. Know when to hand off. This is when me being impatient on the Sunday night is starting to do, I need to make like a code change and Claude's just taking ages and then I go, okay, fine, I'll get Copilot to do it. And Copilot did it within like 15 seconds. And then I stopped Claude and said, no, stop, Copilot's already done it, look at the output, blah, blah, blah. What I think I mean by that is know when to steer, and sometimes it's okay just to stop and go in a different direction because you're the driver, you're the orchestrator of these, and they're the tools to use them. And then, a pattern matching, which is similar to inference and convention behavior, is it just goes on patterns. So like we made a particular change on the Saturday night, and then Claude was going, the exception's not related to that. And I was going, of course it is. Because we deployed the test and it's in Agents MD. We said that we did a test and the testers did a performance test and it was fine. And what it was doing is Claude looked at the exception, did pattern matching, but didn't pay attention to the context. And again, that's an extremely difficult problem to solve, but it's also about verification and don't take everything that the models say in blind faith. And so that sort of in finishing up is what can you do? Like, and I would probably say I take, not the data-driven approach, but I'm doing an engagement for a financial institution. I'm in the scoping and design phase, but I actually do this approach the same. I've got all my workshops, I've got all my findings, I've got all the Copilot transcripts, and I've got it in because I'm building context. And when I actually start doing coding, I can correlate all the transcripts and the workshops and all the findings into it. And so starting from the bottom is ask for reproducible outputs. Build tools, not prompts. Is charts with Python scripts. Don't get it to build a chart, build a Python script so you can annotate it so you can change it. So when the client says, can you change the heading, you don't need to burn tokens. you just change the Python script. The cross-validating across sources, not just one source of truth. I like that line. 1's a hypothesis, maybe. 2's evidence. 3, more than likely, is confirmed. So if possible, if you can have multiple data sources and they all suggest the same thing, that's extremely useful. More thinking and polished output is more, it might seem structured, but sometimes I can be a bit like hit and miss. But separate, have a sandbox, a raw folder full of dump and it's all messy information and a structured output. And that's okay. Don't try and combine them all together. It's good to have a messy sandbox that the client doesn't see. Yeah, direct, don't delegate. I've been touching on it. It's the steering. It's the feedback and feed forward. Is don't just assume that the agent will do what you want it to. You're the driver. You're the steerer. Structured output as you go. Write, good documentation. Be consistent. Have a discipline. Everything that's good, everything that's gold, save it to a document. Save it to the context. Remember this. Running tools, not necessarily ACF, but anything, LLMs, models, hallucinate. They've got all these behavioral and inference problems. Ground your repo. Don't trust that it's going to understand it. Write a scan over the doc, save the doc. So each time when you come into the repo, you've got some grounding. So the LLM doesn't have to scan the entire repo to get some understanding. The data layer first, it's optional, but building up that data layer approach consistently pays off over time. I've sort of got it up there. 1 hour or 2 of setup saves days and days of time because you're not reinventing the wheel. And then the last one is, I think, in essence, I think that's the sum of this talk, is to build up a central system map. Agents MD serves that, and it provides the context, the starting point for agents and multiple agents to work on the same approach as a starting point. You can restart, you can start, close your computer down, close the CLIs, you can come back, and you're back at the same place. And critically, the agents are back at the same place as they were. And that is about it.
This is microphone on. There we go. Before I sort of hand over to the audience, that library ACF that you showed,
Yep.
That's yours, right?
Yep.
Cool. And anyone can use that?
Yeah, it's MIT license, so it's just on GitHub. It's IMIC being software on GitHub.
Yep.
But it's got instructions, you can run it yourself. It's agent agnostic or model provider agnostic, so it works on Claude, Copilot, Codex, and Gemini.
All right, cool.
Yep.
Yeah, I've heard rumours of this in the office. I haven't seen it yet, so better go and have a look at it. So anyone else got questions for Andrew? Yeah, one over here, sir?
Yeah, I've got 2 questions.
Yeah, hang on, I'll run over. Yeah.
I'll just try and remember the first one. Great presentation, by the way. Thank you very much. So first question is, did the agents got off track at any points, and how do you actually steer it back to on the right track?
Yeah, that's the tricky thing. I would use that word, have a task and have checkpoints. So make a plan and decompose a plan into multiple tasks, and then have it checkpoints. So like have a plan MD or equivalent with individual tasks, and then get the agent to respond and say, I've done task A time task B, and then you can either manually do a checkpoint, or you can get the agent to say, hey, at the end of task A, describe what you've just done, as an example. And so maybe if you want, depending on the context, you could be viewing the code changes that it's made, so you're actively steering. But that idea of having a decomposable task, I think is a good one. And when you say to an agent, run a particular checklist, it's more than likely to going to follow it.
Yes.
Rather than just go, I'll make all these code changes, you work it out, you decide the order. That increases exponentially the likelihood that it will go off track.
That's great. And second question is, how do you actually feedback? You're talking about feedback, right?
Yep.
To the agent. What do you do about that? What is the process?
Yeah, it would be the data within some of the analysis. So I could go part of like I had sort of building up the context layer, building up the understanding of what the problem was. And then each piece of data I was feeding back into like the agent's MD or some of the findings. And to go, this particular, like one of the queries had like 18 or 20 DB calls all at once, and it spied off into it. And then that was sort of, the context wasn't aware of it. But what it was useful was to feed it back into the context so all the agents became aware that that was a fundamental flaw of the system. And then the other one is that feedback is direct feedback, is when they either not answering a particular question, or they give the wrong answer, or they do inference behavior inference, feed back to them, and then also make it a memory for them, or say, record that. Ground this in truths, follow this particular or citation, and then other ones is great useful, is provide a citation. So if you've got a particular finding, write a citation based on a particular internet source, as an example.
That's cool. Any other questions? Yep, we're going over here.
Hey Andrew, this is Rajesh here.
Hey.
I have a question regarding the context size limitations, especially with the investigation that involve lots of data and long conversations.
Yeah.
At some point, you will reach the limit of the context size.
Correct. Yeah.
Then you may need to start a new conversation, and it will lose all the context, right?
Exactly,
Have you
100%. And
faced
then
any
that's
of
the difficult and part of like that context management, and this idea that all of these files that we were just looking at it, Agents MD was 500 lines as an example, which is not extremely massive. But part of that idea is to reduce, where possible, vast amounts of data. So Agents MD acts as a pointer to other files. So it does not need to keep it all in its context window. So that's an extremely tricky problem to solve, but my approach and approach in here is to keep everything, the system map, enough information in the documents for the agents to discover, but some particular tasks by their nature take a lot of context. They just do. Like a code base, it does take a lot of context. A lot of data does take a lot of context window. And so in that case is to try and reduce that, to chunk particular things up. But I would probably say that there's no clean answer to it. And what I do is to avoid that context rot, is what I was trying to communicate, is I actually shut the CLIs down and start again. Because you would know the expression context rot. When your context window is filling up, it becomes less precise. And it's actually, in a way, it's not garbage collecting, but it's starting to take out information that it doesn't think is relevant. Which for us with solving tasks, that's not a very good thing, because it might be discarding things that we don't want it to. And so then it might just go back to its training. It might just go back to its model data. But the challenge is to how do you keep things in context without bloating? And so in answer to your question is to try and keep your pointer files brief, accept that some things are going to bloat the context window. And when you've bloated the context window, save the goals, save the data, and then start a new session. You can either compact or this or that. I actually just tend to close the CLI and start again, because I want to be confident I'm starting from a fresh, empty base, if that makes sense.
Cool. All right, maybe one more Oh yeah, we've got one down here. Hold on. So everyone online can give you and hear your voice.
Yeah. Would you say having structured logging on an application was the key to actually give that context in the application, what's going on? Like having that good set of logs produced from the application was the key differentiator for the agent to sort of track through and say, yep, that's the application flow and all that. That's where the bottleneck is, or that's where the loop happens. You reckon that's the differentiator?
In this case here, there was no structured logging. I had to infer the structured logging. from the IIS logs and the stack trace and the event viewer, because there was an old legacy .NET 4 application that had bad telemetry. They only were putting data out to App Insights a couple of days before the incident, and the whole logging, the structured logging was effectively broken. So in answer to your question, yes, 100%. If you had structured logging, it would have made it so much easier, because as we know, structured logging has got all your data points and enough context. I, in a way, had to reinvent structured logging based on all the archaic reading IIS logs, reading the event viewer, reading the dump, etc., and effectively hydrating, in a way, the structured logging. I did, 100%, totally, exactly. Which is obviously not the most, it's one of the most inefficient ways to do it. But I had no choice, because there was no structured logging. Yeah, well, it was. It 100% was. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, wow. Maybe we'll call it there. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Andrew. All right, so let's just take a 5-10 minute break. We'll get Bill set up. Bathroom break. I think there's some food and some drinks left, everyone. So help yourself, and then we'll come back for session number 2. Cool. Do I need to do anything for you, Bill?
I don't think so.
Just monitor that thing or leave it, right? Yes. All right, hello. Hopefully everyone's well hydrated, ready to resume. I think maybe, is anyone down the hall there, Randy? Can't see anyone? All right. So, we have Bill Chesnut. Hey? There we go. Azure MVP, hopefully to be re-awarded MVP very shortly. We're all anxiously awaiting the news. And so we are going to hear why logic apps are better for integration workloads. I'm going to set a challenge for Bill. I'm going to see how tough the audience is. Who loves logic apps? That's not even an answer. There you go. I think 3 people partially like it. So I think you got a good challenge.
Well, I guess the other question is, who works in integration workloads? Who's building integrations? Yeah. Because that'll kind of change the answer.
Let's rock and roll, Bill. Looking forward to this one. Thank you.
Just getting the recording ready to go and everything. So yeah, part of this was driven by one of my clients that we built a nice logic app environment, and their developers would rather write code than do visual design. So they switched to function apps, and their support people struggled. So here's a little bit about me. And the good thing is BizTalk goes out of support in 2030. I'm going to retire about 2030, so my Twitter handle works. So the agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about integration workloads. What's the difference kind of with integration workloads than some of the other workloads that you have? Some concentrating on some of the supportability issues, because that's one of the things, especially I see as a consultant. We go in, we build all this stuff, we walk away from it, and somebody else has to support it. So, and the options that we have, so Logic App Standard, Function Apps, Web API. I'm going to really put Function Apps and Web API together because it's code. Talk a bit about Logic App Standard, talk about the Function Apps, some testing. I've got a little bit in the demo of a new thing that's coming. It's in preview now. And if you're interested in writing your logic apps in code instead of the visual designer, Wagner Silvera is going to be talking on Integration Down Under Thursday night at 5 p.m. on the new SDK that allows you to do that. So let's get started. So One of the things I mean about integration workloads is typically you don't have control of both ends of the equation, because somebody's sending you data, you're processing it, putting away in one of your systems, or you're sending data out to somebody else. So that opens up the fact that things can change that are out of your control. Also, what we've seen a lot of times is, does everybody have perfect test data for when they're building things? I've been in the business 40 some years now, and test data is always the challenge. Because what will happen, and what we've seen in a couple of projects I've done recently, is they'll go into the test system and enter some data. And they tend to, because the testers are doing it, they tend to fill in everything. Where when you go to the production system, they don't fill in everything. So the test data will have all the fields you expect. You go start against the production data and there's fields missing. And the thing is, in their specification, it says those fields will be there. So then when you go live with it, and that's one of the things that happened to me. Building some stuff for a client, we did function apps. I didn't build the code, but I ended up having to debug it because all of a sudden we went into the test environment, it was using some live data, and all of a sudden it was failing. And I was getting that wonderful error of object not set to an instance of an object. And there was a very large try-catch around it, so it could be one of 25 things happening in there. The only way I was able to fix it was I actually took the message from production into the dev environment, loaded up the code in the debugger, and stepped through it. Support people probably aren't going to go to that point to fix it. So, and the thing is, you also get what I've run into in a few instances, this, even if it's a SaaS application. So I've done stuff with SuccessFactors and ServiceNow and Salesforce. Somebody will decide that we're putting a new project in and go make a modification to one of those that changes the data that's coming to you. So all of a sudden you're getting something different. And it's something that probably should have gone through change control, but they said, oh, that particular thing's not live yet. So it happens. And again, the other thing you end up running into, I do a lot of EDI work. We get third-party systems, their network goes down, things like that. So where we get errors where things are timing out, how do we restart them and things like that. And that's one of the advantages we'll see in some of the logic app side of things. And again, how easy is it for non-developers to look at something and figure out where it's failed? I guess one of the things I've actually thought about, especially with the AI stuff, is would AI just, when we're building the code, we tell it to check every field? And as a developer, you wouldn't have done that, but AI, you may tell it to go check every field. And the thing is that with the function apps, the try-catch, you could wrap try-catch around every single thing, but then you're going to end up with code that's almost unreadable because you've got so much wrapped around it. And then the other thing is how easy it is it to restart the process? And this is one of the things I've run into with EDI, because an AS2 message will come in, we'll decode the AS2 message and it'll be fine. We'll send the MDN back to the customer saying that we're able to decode the AS2 message, but then we go process the body of the AS2 message, so an X12 or an EDIFACT message, and it fails, and we need to fix something and restart it. But when we send back a second MDN for that same message, they get a little excited. So that's one of the things is we'll see with the logic apps is some of that restart inside of the process. So our options for integration workloads typically are logic apps. Previously, it was things like BizTalk on-prem. And again, I started with BizTalk in 2002, so the actual doing visual design of workflows is something that's kind of ingrained in me. And before that, I was actually doing SSIS. And how many people have done that? And that, again, is another primarily visual designer. You're dragging shapes, connecting them, things like that. Mitch Denny was a classic one. When I first got to Australia in 2000, they started the .NET user group because .NET 1 was in beta. And he said, no, I don't like BizTalk because you can't write it in Notepad. So that was his a mark. If I can't write it in Notepad, I'm not interested. So, and if you look at the Logic app, there is JSON behind the workflow. You could write that in Notepad. You wouldn't want to, but you could. And then there's other things that the function apps that's come along since then. And basically, it's made it a lot easier for those timer functions, service bus messages, things like that. Before that, you would have to write a Windows service that would wake up and sit there and start polling for things or look at the service bus queues and things like that. One thing I'm not going to talk about is some of the Data Factory and some of the third-party tools, the other kind of integration tools in the market. So Logic apps. So one of the nice things I like about Logic apps is the 1,400 plus connectors you have to different ecosystems. So you can get started with like ServiceNow, Salesforce. There's connectors out there that will present you with a schema of what you want to do. There is a little bit of reason you may not want to use that. Is we basically, in the one project, we ran into an issue where we were just, the cost of the managed connectors was blowing out. So we did end up in that project. Once we knew everything that we needed to build, we switched over to creating a OAuth token and just doing an HTTP call with the kind of the same payloads. The visual run history, I think, is one of the keys to why Logic Apps works better in integration workloads, because I can open up that run history and I can see where it failed. And the thing is, sometimes where it fails is not where the problem's at. So it'll be trying to find a field, but that field wasn't in the payload to start with. And I can actually walk back up that run history, find out where it parsed that payload, and see that there's missing fields. So that's one of the things. And then the other one, and I'm not sure if everybody's aware of this, is the restarted in action. So that's where if you get things that are timing out to a customer's website, you can actually go and restart at that step or at that action in the workflow and continue forward, which makes it a whole lot easier for a lot of things to restart. One of the things that I also do is that typically in a workflow, if I've got a failure, I catch that failure in there and I log out the run ID of the workflow that failed, and I usually send those to teams with that run ID in there. So they can go open the workflow, paste that run ID in the run history, and it'll bring up that workflow that failed. So, and that basically gives you everything you need to do to try to debug that, where you don't have quite that same thing if you're going into functions and diving into App Insights trying to find it. And I'm not sure about you, but there's got to be a better science on how to cut down the noise in App Insights because there is so much stuff there. Some of it's helpful. We've used it in the past where we had some functions running and they were running really slow. We couldn't figure out why, but we were able to go into App Insights, look at the dependencies, and we saw a SQL query that was taking 2 minutes. And then we were able to fix that SQL query. But that piece of it is typically the unusual side of it, where the failures, it's harder to find. So with function apps, it's all code. So basically you're writing the code. The 1400 connectors are coming to function apps. They have got a preview out there right now. So you're going to be able to use all of the logic app connectors in your function apps. So that kind of mutes the reasoning behind the connectors for your function apps. But again, you also get minimal logging out of the box. So typically, if you just connect App Insights and you don't add any logging to it, you get kind of the start and the stop, and you get the request coming in, things like that, a little bit of the dependency logging automatically. You can build as much logging as you want to in there, but again, you're battling that point where you've got so much logs that you can't see the problem for all the logging. And we ran into, they didn't have the log analytics set to consume enough data in the day. So one of them, we got 5 hours of logging a day before it decided it had used its quota for the day and stopped logging. So that didn't really help a lot either. So, and again, you can build all your custom JSON serialization, XML serialization, all that validation in there in your function apps. But it really depends on your data. If there's a big payload and there are like 5 or 6 fields that have to be there, you can validate those. But if there's 25 fields that may or may not be there, it makes some of that validation a little bit harder. So unit testing, this will be a little bit controversial about that. For integration, unit testing, in my opinion, is not really helpful because you're going to be feeding in canned data that you know what it looks like. It's going to run through, do the mappings, or do a failure depending on what you're trying to test in your unit test. So what I really, in all the integration work I've done, even in the BizTalk days, I did more integration testing. But integration testing is a lot harder to set up because you either have to do clean database backups, and if you're using databases, you have to do clean backups. But again, you're still doing a lot of canned data. You know what the data looks like that you're feeding into the integration tests. But they do help because they will look at all of those systems. I know that logic apps have got some unit testing in them now, and they've got mocking ability to mock your endpoints. You can do the same thing in function apps. And even now, you don't even bother. You just get Claude to write your unit tests for you. So now we'll hop into a little bit of a demo on this. So if we've got a, let me just get to the right one of these. So if we've got a function app here, we've got some JSON data for an employee that's got some shift hours and things like that. We've got a simple function that goes down through there. And one of the things it's doing is it's assuming that it's got shift data. Let me just, Is that better? Yeah. So yeah, it's making some assumptions that it's got the data there. Visual Studio is getting better for that because you'll notice that it's got the little green line under there saying that may be null. But there are a couple of flags you can set in your project that will turn that off. So depending on who set the project up and whether they didn't want to see it or not. But basically, if we start this up, And how many knew that the REST thing works in Visual Studio? I didn't discover it till about a month ago. I've always used it in VS Code, the REST extension. So it's just basically you're doing a simple post. So let's send that request. So that one got a 200, everything was happy and there. So basically let's go down, and what I've got is, you'll notice that this one's got the shift data with the shifts and the hours. This one's missing that data. So if we try that again and send the request, because we're in debug mode, it takes us right there, but if we were running this in Azure, we would get back the 500 object not set to an instance of an object. And depending on how much stuff was in your try-catch is how much stuff that you had to go look through. And the fact that you need to go either have that payload logged somewhere or archived somewhere to go and see what data came in. And so that's basically kind of the idea behind the functions side of things. But again, I mean, you could still build the functions to validate the data that you needed to validate and then reject it. But again, this particular example that I had was the document said they will always be there. The first time we ran it in test environment, they weren't there. But it was, and what it was an edge case that a new employee had been created, but hadn't got far enough through the system to get the shift data built. But that was not any of the testing that any of the testers did. It was a very extreme edge case. So, and I don't know if anybody knows success factors, but it's about 14 products put together. So sometimes it works like you expect it to, sometimes it doesn't. So if we then hop over here to our logic apps, and let's look at, see if we can get, it decided to load a new runtime too today. So we'll see if it, see if the designer will come up. Yeah, I will when I get it up. Okay, let's just cheat and use the run history on this one. So basically we see that we've got a very simple workflow. Is that, and basically we get a payload, we parse the JSON, we go pull a variable out, and we send the response back. And we can see that we can actually see pretty much everything that came in. And the other one that's really nice is that we can see the raw parts of that, but we can also see a lot of the information if we need to from the headers and things like that. And that's one thing that has helped a lot, is that we got some headers that were wrong that came in. Then we can parse the JSON, and we can see that all the information parsed. We can see the variable that it found. It initialized the variable, found that. And the nice thing is you can actually go look at the actual code that the logic app was executing for that particular action. And all of those, you have that, the code, because this is what runs into, because you'll go in here and then you'll take that sample payload and you'll parse it, use the sample data to parse it, and it has a tendency to put a lot of things required, and sometimes you have to go fix that because sometimes they don't come in. And then you get the response, and you can see that response that was sent back. Now if we go back to another run that I did without that bit of data, you can see here that we get a failure. We got a red failure there. But if you look at that, it's like, okay, unable to initialize the variable. That's almost as good as object not set to an instance of an object. But the fact that we can go back to the parse JSON and figure out that there's no shift data. There's basically all the data we've got. We can look at the schema here and say there's supposed to be shift data. So then we can go here, look at the code view, and we can say, oh, okay, we're trying to dig into the shift data. Now, I did fudge this a little bit because by default in Logic Apps, it puts question marks between the segments to handle nulls. But when you're actually using something for a calculation, when it brings back a null, it's probably not going to help you anyway, because you're going to fail on the next step when you're trying to use that to do something. So in there between those segments, if you have a question mark in there, it'll handle the nulls, and you can check that. So basically, it's really that visual ability to go look at the run, and look at the run history, and be able to see where it's failed. Because the thing is, if you drop it out as a failure, you put a message in Teams, support people go out, they grab that run ID and basically paste that into the run history, and it shows them that workflow that failed, and then they're able to. And then what they could do is that you can do, when you have this running, you can say submit from this action. Now, one of the other things that people don't realize is I can actually update my Logic app, deploy it with a fix, and rerun that instance with the new code. So if you do figure out a problem in your code, fix it, deploy it, and then you can run that payload through again. There is some PowerShell too that you could actually grab the run IDs and resubmit all of those runs. The one thing that won't happen is that when you have that HTTP request and response and you do a resubmit, it knows it can't send the response back because the caller's gone. And a lot of times that's not going to help you because they want a response back. So you might look at more of a pattern where you accept a message and then put it on a service bus queue or something like that, process it, and then send them the acknowledgement back that says that we've got the message, and then send them another asynchronous message that said it's been processed and here's the details about it. And that's a little bit the way, if you've done stuff with EDI, Edifact or X12, they have a asynchronous acknowledgement that it's processed. So now I'm going to, are there any questions? Yes? Oh, let me unmute that. Hold on.
All right. So one of the, it's great to start with. We know Logic App, that's what the work is. But one of the things that one of my customers actually discourage Logic Apps, which is kind of like, I didn't have an answer back then. I'm not sure how improved now. Basically, assume that you see all that data, like all the employee data and all that.
Yep.
Now, we don't have a control of where that data is stored because it's actually out of our control where the Logic App is storing that data. So back then, there are two reasons. One was even the access tokens and all that was logged. Like the token response was logged in that.
Yep.
Second thing is like if that employee data or health data, for to be more particular, they falls under the PII data. And then we can't store PII data on a system that we don't have a control of, and therefore, we can't use it. Is there a better way to say, I know that we can control the access to who can see this, but is there a way that where it's stored, can we actually introduce storage or something that says, no, you got to keep your run history in this in a storage that we have control, because in function app we can do that.
Yeah, so there's not a function built into it that way. You can tell it that is secure data and it will not log it. So in the actual, each action, you can say that the input's secure and the output's secure, and you don't get any logging from it. You would still get the failure at that initialized variable and be able to look at the code associated with it so you'll know what it's looking for. But you would have to, and what I would do is that I've done in the case with EDI, is that I've actually sent the data to a Cosmos DB that I controlled. And the logging was there with the run ID. So you could take the run ID, go into Cosmos, find the data that you want to look at the line that failed, and look at the code and be able to put those two together so that you don't have that logging.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, so because basically each one of these, basically you can set in the settings is that secure input, secure output, and it will not get logged. And it will not show up in the run history.
And it doesn't mean that it stores it and not showing, right? It doesn't even store it.
No, does not even store it. Because they knew the same thing as you. PII data, personal data, stuff like that that you don't want available can't be stored. Because this is the replacement for BizTalk, which did heaps of HL7 stuff, which was all medical data. And you didn't want it anywhere else. So yeah, you've got all of that. Any other questions? Yep.
One small question. So, like, can you actually...
Wait till him to bring the microphone to you so that we can get it on the recording.
Yeah.
There you go.
Hello. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I just only got one small question. So,
Yep.
Can you write tests for this thing? Because I reckon, like, at some point, then the logic would get more complicated than that. Then you would
Yep.
want it to have like handlings for different scenarios, like when one field is there, when it's not there, and things like that. So at some point, like I would imagine it would go from this very simple logic to like some kind of logic that branches out like a lot of times. And I reckon like if you don't have a test for it, then
Yep.
at some point it
So
would be. Yeah. Thank you.
you can do, there's basically and I'm trying to remember where that trigger's at in there. There is I don't know whether it's in the, create unit test from run. So if you look at that thing up at the top, it creates a separate project at the bottom that is a unit testing project. It will actually take the data from that particular run and use that data to create a test. So they've done a lot of work in that unit test side of things to be able to do those unit tests. And it basically mocks out the endpoints and basically allows you to create the unit tests and then run the unit tests. And you can, I know that they're working on it. I don't know if they've got it in there yet, but they were working on the ability to be able to also run those unit tests when you commit the code.
So Bill, on those unit tests, what sort of verification or assertion can I add? Like, how does that work?
It basically generates C# unit tests.
Ah, great. So, yeah. So that, like, I can imagine, like, because I haven't seen this, right? So
Yep.
I can imagine it's got the payload in the code somehow or in a file. Somehow it references that.
Yep.
Runs some sort of execution, and then you can just do all your assertions on the output.
I don't know whether this will work or not, but we'll try it.
YOLO. Let's do it. Let's see what happens. No. Computer says no. Yeah. You're putting your poor computer on the spot.
Yeah, so, there is a talk out on, I think there's a talk out on integration down under that goes into the unit tests.
I could add, from having done it, actually worked with logic apps, which I am a fan of. I would say that is actually one of its limitations because you have a very complex nested workflow, and if you have connectors that are not necessarily a HTTP call,
Yep.
it does have limitations. And so you can have, I would describe it as smoke testing unit test, if that makes sense.
Yep.
But deep, rich, nested layers, the unit tests become unwieldy. You can't run them in the cloud unless you jump through an enormous, you
Yep.
use CI/CD. They're good for local.
Yep.
But yeah, I was flagged that from having done it, complex workflows become untestable at a point.
Yep.
due to their complexity. And
Yep.
if you're using non-HTTP connectors or whatever, they can't be mocked. And so you're unable to effectively do a unit test.
Yep. They are working on that. It's one of the top things that they're working on at the moment around some of that. So if there's no other questions, I'll show you.
One more. All right, will be the last one. We'll move over.
The submit from action option seems very handy, especially when you have failures and you want to replay the payloads, right?
Yep.
Let's say in a production environment where you have hundreds or thousands of failures, and you made a fix to like the previous step, and now the payload is correct. So is there an option to do a batch run, of all the failures?
Basically, there used to be with the logic app consumption, there used to be a add-in for log analytics that would do that for you. But there is PowerShell or REST API calls that you can pass the run ID. So you can actually go into log analytics, get all the ones that failed at that step, because you've got that step history in log analytics, and you got the run ID, this step failed, and you can get a list of those run IDs, and then you can feed those into a REST API call to restart that workflow.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Bill.
Okay, now I want to show one other thing is they've got a new project called Codeful Workflows. And this is using the new Logic App SDK. And this is a very simple workflow. Let me just make this a little bit bigger. Where's no, wrong one. What is it, Control Plus? Okay, let me just get rid of that. So basically, this is a workflow written in code using the new SDK. So basically, you define your trigger. You define this get current weather action. And then you define the response. And then you basically define how the workflow runs, and then you create a stateful workflow with that. So this, to me, will also probably make it easier for a lot of the AI agents to write logic apps, because it's all code. But the one thing that I was very impressed with from it is that we've been talking about the run history. Do I get run history out of this code? So if we look at the overview, this is my success.
Oh, the suspense.
Yeah, something went wrong. That's what it's going to take.
Oh dear.
Let me just go. No, actually. Let me start the debugging up again. And the difference is, too, in a standard logic app, when you wanted to look at the run history, you had to look at the run history. You had to go to the workflow and look at the run history on that workflow. No, this one's running, I think. Yes, of course. They insist on sharing the same.
You don't need the compile to have Randy.
Start with debugging. So the nice thing about the way they've done the codeful stuff is that you'll see that there's a run.cs. You can get an overview of run.cs, and it will show you all of the workflows in this that are codeful and give you ability to select which workflow you want to look at the run history for. And of course that didn't. Okay. Let's see if we can get one of these to come up. So one of the things is that this Thursday night at 5 p.m. Melbourne time, Wagner Silvera from the Microsoft, it's not going to come up. It's not going to cooperate. Let's try to run it one more time. Oh, there's debug. Let's go overview.
Oh, looking good.
It's trying to do
Looking
something there
better.
at the bottom. Let's just see if we can get it to start. Wagner Silvera is going to do a talk on the SDK, which is basically this code. And he'll basically walk you through that, what you need to do for that. Okay, that looks like it did it. Run the trigger. Okay, that's running one. That refresh. And that was just then, so we click on that. We got running straight.
Hey.
And basically we've got all the same stuff that you expect to see in there. So you can, and you can have both normal workflows and codeful workflows in the same Logic App Standard project. So if you got something,
So does that mean?
microphone.
So does that mean that, like earlier on, we had this problem of that Logic App? If you had run a complex like calculations or something, we'll be writing like a half dozen lines of JavaScript, like all that. Can we do that in C# now?
So basically, what you can, there's two ways of doing that now. Okay, if you look at if you create your Logic app with custom code, it actually creates a function project in your Logic app, and those functions are of a type of workflow function trigger or workflow trigger. And so it doesn't go outside the Logic app. It basically does a binary call into a DLL that gets compiled. And that's what we used in the project when we converted from our managed connectors to using custom connectors with OAuth tokens. Getting an OAuth token in a Logic app is a pain in the ass. Getting it in 30 lines of .NET code is easy. So that's what we had, is we had a function over there that we called, that went off and got the OAuth token, brought it back, and we had code in there too that it even stored the token in storage, knew when the expiry date was, so it could actually reuse the same token for whatever the token life was, because the token life would come back in that call to go get the token. So we basically saved a lot in that. So you can do that in there. There's also going to be, and Wagner will cover more of this when on Thursday night, there is a custom code shape for these codeful workflows that you can write blocks of C# code in. Not JavaScript, because I hate JavaScript. But that's one of the things that they have thought about, is that being able to write those other pieces of code in there.
So Bill, just in that workflow, one CS, right?
Yep.
Nice, straightforward, sequential workflow. I guess we're getting some sort of fluency notation here to do branching, then something else, or how do you?
So basically, it would be you're defining that conditional action, and then it's kind of the way I saw one of the examples that he did. He did a talk for build. You can go out and find the build talk about what's new in Logic apps, and it basically kind of nests it underneath that action. So you'll have a if-then type block where you've got the two sides of your condition.
Okay,
And
cool.
you can create more of those actions. And you'll notice that workflow action.managed is using a managed connector. So that actually was going out to Azure to a managed connector and coming back. But then there's your built-in trigger. Yeah, it could be a workflow trigger managed that was going out to ServiceNow or Salesforce, things like that. So all of that stuff they've thought about in there. They don't have quite all of the managed connectors there yet, but they have added a bunch more connectors to the built-in connectors so that you don't have to go use the managed connectors. So, okay, so let's hop back to my slides real quick. So basically that, and again, I reiterate that kind of sometimes consultants and developers forget about somebody having to support this stuff after they walk away from it. And that's one of the things that I think that helps with the being able to look at that run history. And again, even if we have to block out data because of those issues, we still know what step failed easily without digging through App Insights and things like that. And again, AI may solve all of these issues. We may be able to just point it at App Insights and it tells us that this is the line that failed in our function app by looking at the data. But again, we'll have to have that data stored somewhere so it can actually look at that. So, and again, here is wwaintegrationdownunder.com. If you go out to that, that'll give you the details about the talk. And we do it at 5 p.m. on this Thursday, and it'll be on YouTube Live about a couple hours after that. And then you can go view it. And if you go to the Integration Down Under page, let me just see if I can get there on one of these browser windows. You'll see the talk and the live stream link, but you'll also see the 20 previous talks. And at the bottom, there's a link to the full playlist, because there's about 60 out there now, I think, from Integration Down Under. And if you've got something you want to talk about, just get in touch with me and we can get you a slot. So, for Integration Down Under. That was one of the guys I know in Belgium did it, and he used the AI to create his Australian core cat. So, okay, that's pretty much all I've got. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill. That was really cool, actually. I wonder, from the questions before, who likes logic apps? I think after that, I like it a fair bit more. I actually think there's some good uses for that now. I can, as a pro coder, that's very enticing. So I don't know if anyone else's minds has been changed a bit. I don't know. Well, yeah.
I'll ask one more question and I'll give that full.
All right. Well,
can we stop using other libraries that we have already written?
okay. So just to repeat the question, with these new logic apps, Bill, can we import NuGet packages, other packages we've always used in the new logic apps?
If you do the custom code logic app, in that function, you can add whatever packages you want.
Like a single C# file, we can bring in all the NuGet packages on the top.
Well, basically, you just you get into the function project directory and you do .NET package add.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because we used it for PGP, encryption and decryption, because that had always been a pain with the logic apps. You'd have to call out to another function sitting in Azure somewhere, do the decrypt, but then you're bringing it back unencrypted. So yeah, you can add those. We did run into one issue. I tried to cheat, because with the logic app standards, you can't. Each one of your parameters is a line in the environment variables when you deploy. I tried to hook up to app config in the function, and it broke. And it broke at the most inopportune time. It worked for a while. They deployed a new version of the runtime, and it broke. So, there's a couple of things there that, that's one of my asks at the moment is a way to hook up app config to where you don't have to define the variables. So.
All right, we got a new adopter there. Thanks, Bill.
Yep.
Any other questions? All good? All right, thank you, Bill. All right, so thanks for coming, everybody. If you're interested in doing a talk here next month or any of the months later, reach out to me, find me on LinkedIn, go to our Discord channel there, just ask a question, and I'll get you hooked up, I'll get you a spot here. So thanks very much, and we'll see you all next month.